You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. There's a feeling that so often sneaks up on you when you're building a fulfilling life. And it's the sort of feeling that has the power to stop you in your tracks if you let it. What I'm referring to is the sensation of chronic guilt. And when I'm referring to guilt here, I'm not talking about the healthful recognition that arises when you did something misaligned and truly want to repair it. I mean that sticky sensation that comes on the heels of convincing yourself that you're somehow not enough, did not do enough, should have been different, should have done more, should have seen something coming, should be farther along than you are. It's the kind of guilt that causes you to feel smaller than your spirit and compresses your possibilities. The kind that convinces you that flattening yourself is a safer path than expanding into your actual potential. I know this feeling all too well, and it's one that continues to sneak up on me every now and again. What strikes me about this is that I have spent so much attention to this particular subject, and even still, it's something that I'm continuing to hone and navigate. And so with all of this in mind, I want to bring this contemplation here to you today. For a long time, I would live my life from task to task, filling out the role, obligation, and expectations that were thrust upon me, and in the spirit of self-accountability that I allowed myself to take on. Every now and again, I would find myself in the in-between, a pocket of existence where I didn't really have anything on my plate. And these would be the very moments that my chronic guilt would sneak up on me like a bad dream, taking my breath away, putting weight on my chest. I couldn't take a moment for myself in the park, in the bath, at the movies, even on vacation, without combing my mind, berating myself for the things I quote unquote should be doing and wasn't. It felt like I was submerged, breathless, and completely out of touch with the possibility that I could partake in the joy of my own in-between moments. Because it was in those moments, though, that I feared that my worth was tied to my productivity, and I convinced myself that if I wasn't doing anything, then I wasn't enough. This is a feeling that is so often reflected to me in clients and by friends, and I sense that this particular feeling is one that's widespread. We're talking about it here today because we all truly deserve to feel free to create and bask in a fulfilling life of our design and desires. And that is what I'm committed to helping you walk towards. Chronic guilt has a tendency to present itself as something we do when we're being responsible and thoughtful and mature. And it has this way of disguising itself as emotional evidence that you are showing you care. Many of us grew up believing that guilt is a feeling you get when you're being a good person, that it's what prevents mistakes, keeps us in line, and ensures that we don't wander too far outside of who we're supposed to be. But the energetic reality is that chronic guilt is the emotional leash that keeps you from expanding because it convinces you that the safest way to live is inside of a self-contained version of yourself where you won't inconvenience anyone, confuse anyone, or disrupt any expectation that was placed upon you. Inside of this pattern, guilt becomes a psychological manager, a containment system, a set of invisible hands pressing against your shoulders, keeping you from rising too high, moving too fast, or wanting too much. Chronic guilt does not guide you towards your potential. It keeps you in a holding pattern beneath it. It's kind of like staying contorted inside of a cardboard box. which, if you think about, is most definitely not the type of home that you're likely desiring. Chronic guilt wraps around you in a way that causes you to forget that there is a whole world that lives beyond it. It convinces you that the confines of the particular cardboard box that you're in is the safe size to stay within and to not stretch too far beyond. Chronic guilt doesn't want you to grow past your surroundings, and it most definitely doesn't want you to disrupt the expectations of others. And when you stay in the confines of chronic guilt, it invites you to lower your ambitions, soften your voice, apologize for shining, hide your gifts, shrink your desires, overfunction to prevent disappointment, silence your needs, deny your joy, delay your dreams, and equate resting with unworthiness. And it also causes you to view your existence as something you must earn rather than enjoy. This is the box, and it becomes familiar, and you convince yourself it's temporary, and yet you stay inside it. You stay inside because the chronic guilt you feel convinces you that stepping outside of it might expose you or challenge the dynamics that you've grown accustomed to. So why does the feeling of chronic guilt feel so convincing? It's because you've been programmed to teach yourself that you should be doing more. And so many of us were raised in environments where our goodness was measured by how much we produced, how much we suppressed, and how little we needed. So it makes sense that guilt rises in the in-between. It makes sense that it attacks us during rest. And it makes sense that it comes alive in moments where we are meant to receive rather than perform. Chronic guilt binds our worth to our usefulness, and usefulness becomes the metric of safety. Here are the roots that are most commonly hiding underneath it. Inherited expectations, where certain family systems, cultures, or early environments pass along an idea of worthiness to you that is tied to your output, obedience, or sacrifice that causes you to unintentionally carry expectations that you may actually never have agreed to. And then you learned to anticipate the needs and moods or reactions of others as a form of safety, thereby causing guilt to become a shield. You blame yourself for things that were never yours to carry in the first place. And then the cycle continues because in wanting to make things better for everyone else, you preemptively judge yourself so that nobody can use your mistakes against you. Guilt often covers deeper emotions that we're unwilling to allow ourselves to see, like sadness and fear and disappointment or unmet longing. When guilt becomes the background noise of our life, it gets tangled up in how we rest. It gets tangled up in how we are allowed to experience joy. It affects our creative outlet, our ambition, and our dreams. It ties to us and keeps us from becoming the person who challenges our old environment, and it prevents us from rupturing the roles that we've allowed ourselves to adopt. Chronic guilt is binding you to an outdated version of yourself, and we all owe it to ourselves to surpass this grip. So how do we allow ourselves to step outside of the box? Like much of this work, the first step is to identify the source. When the feeling of guilt appears, ask yourself, is this arising because I violated one of my own values or because I violated a learned role? This question alone dissolves half of the power of the chronic guilt. Next, we must separate our identity from our action. You can hold responsibility without self-punishment. You can learn something without convincing yourself that you were bad for not knowing it. You can adjust without collapsing your worth. Because as we talk about a lot on this podcast, your worth does not fluctuate with your productivity. It's not something you earn, it's something you already are. And when this becomes your truth, guilt loses its leverage. We must get into the habit of reminding ourselves that expansion doesn't require large leaps, because sustainable expansion actually thrives on small, consistent acts that remind your system it's safe to grow. So honoring a desire by allowing yourself to take breaks with hints of joy, delight, and pleasure that you grow over time, and setting small boundaries that teaches you that it's safe to set boundaries, or enjoying rest without justification. All of these incremental micro steps are the paved path towards not only your sustainable expansion, but also towards rewiring your chronic guilt pattern. Next time chronic guilt arises for you, intentionally recognize it as a sign that you are crossing into a new territory, and give yourself that permission to recalibrate and reclaim the driver's seat of your life. Visualize yourself placing a hand over your younger self who's still gripping at the steering wheel out of fear, and gently redirect them. Remind yourself that you are safe to lead, rest, and to expand, walking hand in hand with yourself, one step at a time. There comes a point when your chronic guilt cardboard box simply cannot contain you anymore. You'll feel it in your chest and in your spirit, and you'll feel it in your vision for your life. It's a knowing that bubbles up within you that whispers that it's time to stop shrinking to fit the past. The moment then comes when you outgrow guilt. You'll feel it as an internal shift where something, somehow, unclenches and opens up. And with full permission to step forward, your dreams stop feeling far away, and that is the juicy spot where your breakthroughs happen. Chronic guilt is a learned habit. It's not a life sentence. And the chronic guilt cardboard box is not your home, but a temporary container that held you until you learned how to recognize your own worth. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to enjoy the in-between. You are allowed to expand, and you are allowed to create a life that reflects your desires, not your fears. So when guilt surfaces within you, you can honor the part of you that feels this way, and you can choose to grow beyond it. You deserve a life that feels like expansion. You deserve a life that feels fully like you. So lay down the guilt and claim your life. Until next time.